Hello ladies, it's your friend Patty. So I have friends and clients ask me all the time how I get as much done as I do, and I always joke and say that I run on ADHD. But the reality is I run on lists. So I thought today that I would throw back the curtain and share my strategies for creating my lists and how they are, in fact, the glue that holds my very productive life together. Today we're going to talk about how to create a successful to-do list. In fact, lots of lists. So there might be a lot more information to consider than you might think, so I'll go ahead and jump right into it. Oh, you might want to take a second and grab a pen and a paper. Lots of great information here today, hopefully, that you can benefit from. Now let's start in the only place that really matters. You have to be interested and willing to make the list and to do the list, or none of the following informations and strategies that I mentioned today are going to matter. So the question to you is, why do you want to learn skills about organizing your life better? And only you can answer that. But take a minute to think about that answer, because when you want to give up, you need to be able to remind yourself about why this is so important to you to master. Self-motivation is one thing that I can help you behind the scenes, but unfortunately, it's the one thing that really comes from you and you alone. Okay, so how will this help you? The to-do list in my life helps me in basically three main areas. Number one is organization. My list organizing tasks and priorities across every area of my life. Number two is productivity. My lists increase my productivity through a really clear plan of action in the areas of my life that are most important to me to manage on a regular basis. And the third is stress reduction. Super important to me. And I found that once I was able to implement what was on my list, it significantly reduced the stress by keeping me on track. It actually took me years to realize that I'll never be done with my lists. I might be done for the day, but there will always be a list for tomorrow. And to some people that sounds ridiculously obvious, but in my mind when I was younger, I was always chasing the finished to-do list as if I would be done forever. And what I learned is that by ramping up the lists a bit more in detail and had more lists, it kept me even more productive. So for me, the more detailed on my lists, the smoother my life is. So when my life feels a bit chaotic and like out of control, it's either because I don't have a list guiding me, which rarely happens anymore, or I've been slacking off on getting things done on my list. And that creates a little bit of a backlog of sorts. So again, this rarely happens too after more than 15 years of being sort of a list girl. And that's because the stress that comes with neglecting my list is not a lesson that I had to experience too many times before realizing that not doing is way worse than just doing the dang list. Now let's cover a few things to consider to make the learning curve a little bit easier for you. So these are things I wish that I had considered in the very beginning, and if I had to start all over again, things that I would actually consider ahead. Number one is choosing the right tool. What I mean here is like digital versus paper. Which way you organize your list is total personal preference. I primarily like to do my lists on paper, but I also have a Google Calendar for appointments and things like that that I need reminders for, because I can set up reminders to come both to my phone and to my computer. And depending on the appointment, I might have 2 or 3 reminders in the days leading up to an appointment. There's often crossovers where I have an appointment on my paper list too and on my Google Calendar. It's just a win-win, and that way it usually ensures that I remember and it actually gets done. So there's lots of apps that also work well. You can check them out and see what features they offer. And if you decide to go the digital route, that's awesome. It just didn't fit my personal preferences. So customization is next. What's most important is choosing a tool that really fits your personal preferences and your life workflow. Number 2 is structuring your to-do list. I'm talking about daily, weekly, monthly, and long-term lists. Remember I mentioned multiple lists in the beginning? I create a monthly calendar for all of my appointments, etc., that get moved each week to a list that I keep on my counter that's laid out with more detail. From that calendar, I break it down throughout the week. I keep the weekly list on my kitchen counter with an overview of the entire week. This includes things like objects that need to be worked on, appointments, things that need to be finished, any meetings that I need to attend, and things like that. It also might include things with like dinner with friends, whether my daughter is with me or with her dad that week, and when I want to grocery shop, what I need to buy, those kind of things. I also use this weekly list to remind me about the weather as well. That might sound funny, but for example, if I need to mow the lawn, I'll often look to see what day the weather will be good and when I have a chunk of time that makes sense. And this is added to the weekly list as well, which is basically an overview of the week to come. Now, you might not need to get this detailed, and that's okay. My ADHD just requires that I get as detailed as possible to be productive. This is what I have to do to run two businesses, one physical and one online. I help my husband with his business as much as I can. I have rental properties to manage, and we have two homes, and I basically take the responsibility for one of them for the most part. I have a daughter that is in high school and one in college, so making them a priority is absolutely non-negotiable. All of this takes a massive amount of organization to get it all done. Now, I don't say all of that to pat myself on the back. I tell you this because I promise you, if I can successfully juggle all the balls that I have in the air and still have time for self-care and quality time with my family, I promise you anyone can do it. Okay, I digress. Let's get back to the good stuff that will help you to get started. Next is my daily to-do list. I like to keep mine very detailed, as I mentioned, and concise. I split the paper up into many categories so that I can stay focused on one particular area at a time. I lay out my lists with big picture categories, like things to do at home versus things to do at work. I also have categories for things that I want to get done inside the house versus outside the house. Inside's like vacuum, clean the fish tank, weed the gardens, fill the bird feeders. Outside the house, I'm talking about things like errands. So these become sub-lists that I flip the paper on the back side, and I make a detailed list of those things. This really keeps me efficient, and I can create like lists of what I need to buy when I have different stops. And I also have a category for calls and a category for computer work, things that need to be done like checking mails, responding to phone calls, those kind of things. But you can split up your list into whatever categories best suit your life. Just think about these in as much detail as possible, and you'll save a ton of energy and frustration. So from there, I detail each category from easiest, quickest, to the longest or most time-consuming. I prioritize for the most productivity, so to speak. I focus on those things that are super quick and easy tasks first, and doing it this way, I get to see results right away, which is a huge motivator for me, and I get to be able to cross things off my list right away each day. Let's pause for a minute. The next thing that you must be willing to commit to is that you will only do the task at hand, the one that you decide to start with. This means no going into the kitchen to do the dishes just to get distracted by 4 other things along the way, which I used to do. You have to be willing to stay focused on the task at hand to be successful. The more efficient that I get with this, the more productive I've become. Now, I might say something in my head like dishes, mow, laundry, and then I will go in and do the dishes, then go mow the lawn, and then do my laundry. I just repeat this over and over. I know I'm kind of a list geek, but being organized and getting things done, you find little hacks. So I always have a long-term list going as well, usually on paper too. These might be projects that I want to get done in the next season. And in the winter, I start making a list of goals that I want to accomplish in the spring or summer. Our summer season is relatively short here in Maine, so being efficient with my goals allows me to fully enjoy the short summer season as well, which is very important to me. Throughout the summer, I'm actually making a list of things that I want to get done, big picture things for the fall and the winter season, often indoor things. This year in the fall, after cutting back my gardens, I have on the list that I want to paint the brick foundation of my home. Over the winter, I want to get a few rooms painted. These are sort of the long-term things that I add to my next season lists. This started because these are things that often just kept taking up space in my head. So writing them down just relieves my mind to not have to worry about remembering them. If you're somebody that has ADHD like I do, then you get it. If not, maybe all this sounds a bit over the top, but in my world, it works. And if it can help guide even one woman listening to a better, more organized, productive, less stressed life, I'm thrilled. So the next list that I keep is in my car. I'm not sure about you, but it seems like as soon as I click that buckle, seat buckle, my brain starts thinking about things that I need to add to my list. So it's really a reminder of sorts about all the things that I need to add to a list when I'm out of my car. It's often a list of what I need to buy when I'm out running errands, a backup list of sorts. And sometimes if I have an appointment that needs to be added to a list, it's written down as well on that car list. It's really kind of becomes a catch-all to be divided up later, I guess. The other list that I used to keep, but I don't find that I really need it anymore, is the list on my bedside. It just keeps a blank notepad that I keep on my bedside with a pen. And again, I don't really know about you, but it used to be that when I laid my head down at night, my head would just start thinking and going everywhere, trying to remind me of all the things that I either didn't get done that day or need to do the next day or things I didn't cross off or whatever. And sometimes it was so overwhelming. This is where the bedside list was actually born. So then all I needed to do was grab that pen and paper and write down what I was thinking. Once I got it out of my head, I could actually sleep like a baby, which is huge in my world. Now I have found that being much more organized in general, I don't really use the notepad as often on my bedside, but it's still there because now and then it does happen when life gets a little chaotic. Next is setting realistic and achievable goals. So I call these SMART goals. You might have heard this before. This means that I use specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound criteria for setting my lists. I touched on this a little bit earlier. Next is time estimation. It's really important to estimate the time required for each of your tasks realistically. For example, vacuuming might take 30 minutes, mowing might take 20 minutes, emptying the dishwasher might take 10 minutes. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't put the actual amount of time that I think it's going to take on my piece of paper. I just arrange my list so that the quickest is done first, or whatever makes sense for that day and the flow. For example, if it's raining in the morning, I'll move mowing to the afternoon or to another day and things like that. So next is daily review and adjustments. These include things like morning planning. Now, in the morning, I take 5 minutes to review and adjust my to-do list based on the priorities of the day. And at the end of the day, I also do another review. I suggest this to assess what was accomplished. It's really important to be able to recognize how successful you've been throughout the day and to be able to celebrate that a little bit. Do a little high five to yourself. Woo, yay me. And then to be also take a look at what needs to be maybe carried over to the next day. Now, lists are not supposed to make you rigid. Instead, when you're done efficiently, they actually allow you a lot of flexibility. So it's important to be able to be flexible and willing to adjust that list as you need to hone this skill. For example, if it's a weekend day and I'm halfway through my to-do list, feeling really good about it, and I get a text or a call about going to lunch with a friend, I just have to decide which is most important. Now, if the things on my list are a priority and they're actually time sensitive, then I really have to be willing to decline because my goals are more important at that time. But if the things on my list can easily be moved to another day or be done in the afternoon when I get home back or in the evening, then I absolutely do it. So efficiency in lists is actually what makes it easier to fit in more personal, relaxing, fun things in life. It's actually a win-win. Next, I want to talk about utilizing deadlines and reminders. So setting deadlines for tasks that are time sensitive helps to be able to keep track of time and maintain focus on those. Small things like mowing around the rain and the forecast, or big things like painting the brick foundation after the gardens are cut back in the fall. Both are what I would consider time sensitive, even though one is short term and one is long term. Returning certain calls or emails within a time frame might also fall into this category as well. Just be aware of those areas of your life and make them a priority if they are time sensitive. Which leads me to reminders and alerts. Excuse me. Reminders and alerts are going to ensure that important tasks are not forgotten. I rely on these. I do use my paper lists on my calendar where I see them every day and I can share them with my family, but I also use my Google Calendar, which is a method that works really great for me. And it took some time to find a system that really worked. So just be patient with yourself and stick to it. Just keep evolving in your process, and I promise it will come. If you try something for a week or two and it's not working, don't beat your head against a brick wall. Just try a new approach. Incorporating downtime and breaks into your schedule is actually okay. It's sometimes important in the beginning to avoid burnout and to maintain productivity. Just tuck them into your daily plan or be at least flexible enough to listen when your body tells you that you need to take a little break. Remember to also make time for self-care. I find it super important to include self-care activities on my to-do list to make sure that I have a balanced life and routine. I think I've mentioned in other videos, but every daily list for me, my normal day starts with a reminder to meditate, exercise, make coffee, and sit in the hot tub. Then my to-do list actually starts. At night, I pick a time when I stop and will be committed to that, and I relax a bit before bed. I really enjoy reading, and so I have read for 30 minutes on the very end of my list. Staying motivated and consistent is really important too. You can use like small rewards for completing certain tasks. This might be anything that feels like a reward or a treat to you. I don't know. What would that look like for you? Maybe you can let me know in the comments what reward would be powerful enough that keeps you motivated on task. I'd love to hear what that might be for you. For me, that might be extra time on the deck in the evening, reading a book, cooking an extra special meal, or it might even be a second hot tub in the evening. So those are super motivators for me. Consistency is the key to success. My life is run on maintaining a consistent routine. So if you're just starting out, it'll be really important to build the habit of using a to-do list effectively. Even if you're just starting with a few things on the list each day, with consistency, it really will evolve and you'll be more productive and efficient in no time. Next, I want to talk about reviewing and reflecting. So I encourage a weekly reflection to just review what was accomplished and what can be improved day, week, monthly calendar of your organization. So keep making adjustments until you find a system and a flow that works with you and not against you. Getting things done should honestly feel good. It should feel productive. And change your mindset here. Don't allow the feeling of forcing yourself to do what's on your list. You made your list and you made it for a reason. A really important evolution in anybody's organization. I've learned that there are a few things that I can easily get done in the morning or evening of my work day, and other things that I'm more likely to accomplish if it's on a day off. These type of details make a big impact on your success as well. Just keep learning from experience to continuously improve the efficiency of those to-do lists, and I promise you, you'll be a whiz at it in no time. Now, there are two common pitfalls that I wanted to mention before we wrap up here. First is overloading your list. I want you to be sure that you're not overloading too many tasks, and I want you to stay realistic on your expectations. Don't add so many things that at the end of the day you're going to be beating yourself up because you didn't get them done. Remember that you have 7 days in a week, and it's okay to stretch out your list and have just a few things on each day. It is worth re-mentioning. Consider adopting the SMART approach: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And the second thing I wanted to mention is procrastination. Now, personally, I find the more that I procrastinate, the worse that it gets. It's a feeling of so much to do, and then I do nothing. Absolutely nothing. Procrastination is your absolute worst enemy. Once you learn to jump right into your list, it will start to feel so rewarding, and you'll look forward to the feeling of the accomplishment at the end of the day. You might also keep yourself from procrastinating in the beginning by time blocking. Give specific expectations, like doing the dishes while the coffee is brewing, or vacuuming at 10 a.m., grocery shopping on the way home from work, etc. If you need these things to be specific, then do it. Keep an eye on what's most important to you. Doesn't matter what anybody else does, it's really your world, your life. Regularly reviewing and adjusting your priorities will really keep you focused on what matters most. And this is ultimately why we do our list, right? So there you have it. I hope that you found some of these ideas today helpful, and that it will help you guide your own successful to-do lists all the way to the finish line. There is nothing more gratifying than honing a skill until you master it and it becomes second nature. Let me know if you're able to put some of these to work, some of these tips, and I would just love to know. You can drop a comment. If you've already accomplished this, that's fantastic. You go, girl. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. And if you loved the content and you'd love to know as new videos are shared each week, please be sure to subscribe below or by hovering over the little icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the video, and you can subscribe that way. Until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others.